All right. Our speaker tonight is Rachel Lee from the California Historical Radio Society, and she has got a presentation to talk about preserving the foundations of our modern communication. So we'll turn it over to her. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I've been to a number of these, and I don't think I've ever seen this many people in the room. So this is incredible.
That's para.
All right, here we are. Should I stand up, or are you guys okay with me sitting?
Oh, you're fine right where you are.
Right. Well, kind of a lot to hold, so I'll stay right here so that I can see the people online. What if I told you that one of the most relevant radio organizations in the Bay Area isn't focused on the next technology, but on the technologies that made everything that we use today possible? I'm the executive director of the California Historical Radio Society. We preserve the history of electronic communication from early wireless systems and broadcasting to amateur radio, television, and many of the technologies that led to the world we live in today. Before smartphones, before Wi-Fi, before streaming, before television, there was radio. And looking around this room tonight, I suspect many of you have spent years exploring radio in ways most people never will. Some of you have built antennas. Some of you have restored equipment. Some of you have chased DX, worked emergency communications, operated field day stations, or helped get new hams get licensed. You understand that radio isn't magic. It's curiosity. It's experimentation. It's problem solving. And in many ways, that is why CHRS exists, because people decided that this history mattered. Tonight, I'll take you on a tour of Radio Central, show you some of the treasures we have in Alameda, and talk about how amateur radio has been intertwined with the history of electronic communication from the very beginning. CHRS began in 1974 as a group of enthusiasts meeting in parking lots, swapping radios, components, manuals, schematics, tubes, stories, and ideas. What started as a handful of collectors gradually evolved into a community of restorers, historians, operators, and technical enthusiasts. The people who founded CHRS weren't museum professionals, they were radio people. They were folks who couldn't stand to see a piece of history thrown away. They saved manuals, they saved radios, they saved knowledge. Many of them were amateur radio operators. Before there was a museum, there was simply a group of people who believed radio was worth preserving. And nearly 50 years, actually more than 50 years later, that same spirit still drives everything we do. In 2003, CHRS moved into the historic KRE building in Berkeley. And that marked our transition from a collector organization into an informal museum and archive. But the culture remained exactly what you would expect from a radio organization. Knowledge was still passed from person to person. One volunteer knew how to align a receiver. Another knew how to rebuild a power supply. Someone else had the schematic. Someone else knew where to find the part. Sound familiar?
Yep.
That is amateur radio Elmering culture. Knowledge survives because people share it. Organizations like PARA are important because they continue that tradition too. When we eventually lost the KRE building, we learned something valuable. CHRS isn't really about buildings, it's about preserving knowledge, skills, and stories. The artifacts matter, but the people matter even more. Eventually, CHRS relocated to Alameda and acquired what had originally been a telephone exchange built in 1900. Today, we call it Radio Central. It's difficult to imagine a more appropriate home for a communications museum. The building itself is a part of the story. Long before cell phones and the internet, this building helped connect people through one of the earliest communication networks. Every time visitors walk through the front door, they're entering a building that has been part of the communications story for more than a century. When CHRS acquired the building, it needed a tremendous amount of work. The building had been a telephone exchange, a church, and eventually a preschool, complete with tiny little toilets. You can see the tiny little toilets. For nearly a decade, volunteers transformed it into what it is today. Seismic upgrades, flood mitigation, electrical work, exhibit construction, painting, landscaping, storage, lots of storage, infrastructure. The things I'm most proud of is that volunteers built it. Everywhere you look, you can see the evidence of tens of thousands of volunteer hours. That spirit of volunteerism is something I think amateur radio operators understand very well. Whether it's a field day, emergency communications, VE testing, mentoring, club leadership, or public service events, amateur radio has always been powered by volunteers, and Radio Central is no different. After the pandemic, something remarkable happened. Volunteers came back, membership increased, donations increased, momentum increased, and many projects that had been sitting on the drawing board for years finally became a reality. The great room transformed into a museum gallery where we could tell the story of communications technology in a way that is engaging for both technical and non-technical audiences. One of our goals is always to create exhibits that can inspire someone who has held an extra class license for decades and someone who has never touched a radio before. In 2024, we completed the restoration of the building's original 1900 facade. At the same time, CHRS was asking an important question. How do we preserve technical knowledge as the generation that built this organization begins to age out? How do we preserve restoration skills? How do we preserve operating skills? How do we preserve the culture of experimentation? How do we ensure this organization lasts to share this knowledge for the future? Those questions ultimately led CHRS to hire its first executive director after nearly 50 years as an all-volunteer run organization. My role is not to change the culture. My role is to help ensure that culture survives. Our first exhibit focuses on the earliest days of wireless communication. The centerpiece is a working spark gap transmitter. Visitors can generate RF energy, send Morse code, and receive it in real time. For many visitors, it's the first time they truly understand what wireless communication is. For many people, radio is invisible magic. For amateur operators, it's a reminder of where this hobby began. One other thing I love about amateur radio is that operators still think about the physical world, antennas, propagation, noise, signal paths, the things that happen between transmitting and receiving. Most people never think about those things. When visitors send their first Morse code signal across the room, they suddenly realize that radio isn't magic. It's something people built, understood, and improved. The 1900 to 1920s exhibit also introduces tube amplification and is really the origin story of modern communications. The 1920s exhibit explores radio's transformation from an experimental hobby into a household necessity. One of the highlights is our collection of 3-dialer radios. As many of you know, tuning a radio used to require a lot of patience. There was no scan button, no waterfall display, no digital readout. Operators were constantly adjusting controls to pull signals out of the noise. Visitors appreciate how much easier these things have become. Visitors can also listen to modern broadcasts through 9 different 100-year-old speakers. The difference in sound quality are fascinating and help illustrate how quickly radio technology evolved. Many homes still lacked electricity in the 1920s, so most radios were battery powered. As electrification spread, radio adoption exploded. Radio remains the fastest adopted technology ever, faster than TV, telephone, or the internet. This display is on schedule to be completed this fall. By the 1930s, radio had become an essential part of daily life. Families gathered around their radio for news, entertainment, and information. One artifact we're particularly excited about is an authentic wireless remote control console. Visitors will eventually be able to send a control signal and watch the radio physically tune with a rotary dial. We're also recreating a period radio repair shop. This is a section I think many of you will also appreciate. There was a time when equipment wasn't disposable. If something broke, you repaired it. You diagnosed the problem, you found the faulty component, you got it working again. That mindset still exists in amateur radio today. As we move into future exhibits, we'll eventually tell the story of the transistor and the technologies that followed, including the creation of Silicon Valley as we know it. Without those developments, there would be no modern transceivers, SDRs, digital modes, satellite communications, or much of the equipment we use today. CHRS doesn't just preserve equipment, we preserve people's stories. Behind every station, every broadcast, and every innovation was a person who made it happen. The Hall of Fame celebrates those individuals and their contributions to broadcasting. We also maintain a working 1958 broadcast booth where students create podcasts, radio plays, and audio projects. One of our artifacts is the original West Coast NBC chimes. You know the notes? Yes, is anyone musical knows what those are? GEC. Those are the notes that are played for the NBC chimes. Can anyone guess why? There it is. Yes, General Electric Corporation owned NBC. And right next door is one of the most popular areas in the building. And when I gave this the other night, a colleague came with me and he goes, "Well, that's the cleanest I've ever seen that shop." If there's one space where your members might immediately feel at home, it's the shop. It's where radios come back to life. You'll find oscilloscopes, signal generators, tube testers, soldering station, and projects in every stage of completion. But this space is not really about equipment. It's about the people gathered around the equipment. Someone teaching, someone learning, someone troubleshooting. Someone telling a story about how they fixed a similar problem 20 years ago. One of our biggest challenges today is knowledge transfer. There are fewer people who know how to align certain receivers, fewer people who know how to troubleshoot complex tube circuits, fewer people who know how to rebuild vintage power supplies. That makes mentoring more important than ever. If we want these skills to survive, we have to share them. Repairing vintage radios requires more than know-how. It also takes parts. And often those parts are vacuum tubes. We maintain roughly 5,000 tested tubes ready for service and more than 60,000 tubes overall. For many pieces of vintage equipment, those tubes simply aren't being manufactured anymore. So preserving them is a bit like preserving an ecosystem. Anyone who operates vintage gear immediately understands the value of this collection. The high quality tubes we keep are used in radio repairs and are also available for purchase by CHRS members. But additionally, if we have tubes that almost make the cut, but not quite, we'll package them up and we sell them at electronics flea markets to keep them out of the waste stream. CHRS maintains a fully operational amateur radio station, W6CF. This is one of my favorite places in the museum because it reminds visitors that radio isn't just history. Radio is alive. The station is active weekly and regularly demonstrates HF, VHF, and other operating activities. For younger visitors, it may be their first exposure to amateur radio. For experienced operators, it often brings back memories of their first contact, first station, or first field day. One thing I love watching is when a visitor understands they can communicate with someone hundreds or thousands of miles away using this equipment. Long term, we'd love to continue growing our amateur radio presence, expand youth engagement, and increase participation in operating activities, specifically have enough trained operators to support emergency communications capability. Amateur radio remains one of the few places where people can still experiment, learn, build, communicate, and directly control the technology they use. The Hall of Communications focuses on point-to-point communications. Artifacts include the same model as Amelia Earhart's radio direction finder, Gibson Girl emergency radio, military communication systems, spy radios, and modern SDR technology. One thing I think hams particularly appreciate is seeing how many different communication challenges have existed over the years. Different missions, different environments, different requirements, but often the same basic principles. As I mentioned earlier, CHRS is about more than radio. We preserve the broader history of electronic communication, and that includes television, radio's flashier cousin. Our collection includes a 1929 mechanical TV reproducer, a 1951 Dumont Royal Sovereign, the largest black and white TV ever produced, and a color Heathkit television built by one of our members. We maintain analog systems and have built a closed-loop broadcast environment so these TVs operate today. Many of the underlying concepts are familiar: modulation, transmission, reception, signal processing. The technology changed, but the principles remain surprisingly similar. Our library is the largest radio-related library west of the Mississippi. For restorers, historians, and amateur radio operators, it's one of our most valuable resources. We have manuals, schematics.
Uh-oh.
Lost audio.
Yep, I'm letting them know.
Well, therein lies the problem. No problem. Did people get to see the image of the library? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we are. One of my favorite places in the building is the kitchen. Every Saturday, one of our volunteers cooks lunch. Projects get discussed, stories get shared, and friendships get built. If you've ever stayed after a club meeting talking radio longer than the meeting itself, you understand exactly why this room matters. Community is an important part of what we do. It also houses our collection of novelty food radios, including burgers, ketchup bottles, Tic Tacs, and a well-stocked radio bar. Everything you see in that picture is a radio. There are no food products on the
really?
shelf.
Damn.
It's a Tropicana orange. CHRS is at its heart a membership organization. Membership is $40 a year and includes 2 beautifully produced journals, speaker events, and access to a wonderful community of radio enthusiasts. Looking around this room, I suspect many of you have knowledge we'd love to preserve. Maybe it's restoration experience, maybe it's operating experience, maybe it's mentoring, maybe it's simply stories from a lifetime in radio. Those things are every bit as valuable as the artifacts in our collection. Preservation is a big part of our mission, but education is equally important. Last year, we launched our first youth summer camps, one focused on broadcasting and media, and the other focused on electronics and hands-on building. This summer, we're expanding both programs and offering scholarships to ensure access. We also host monthly youth outreach events. We've taught Morse code, early telephone, broadcasting basics, radio repair, and hands-on electronics. One of my personal goals is to create more opportunities for young people to discover amateur radio. Additionally, we have beginning radio repair classes, vintage radio repair classes. We host monthly speaker events on a wide variety of topics. Some recent examples include radio's first decade, women in broadcasting, the Enigma machine, college radio, Dan Healy, who was the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead, Ben Fong Torres, who was a writer and editor for Rolling Stone magazine, and Jim Gabbert, who owned radio and television stations. And of course, one of our most popular presentations was Paul Wessling's talk on Silicon Valley's roots in amateur radio. Our largest annual event is Radio Day by the Bay, which is on July 18th. It's free, it's fun, and it brings together broadcasters, collectors, historians, restorers, and amateur radio operators from across the region. We will have a live vintage radio auction, an electronic surplus sale, a live radio play, W6CF demonstrations, and the announcement of the 2026 Barhoff class inductees. Everything that you see at CHRS was donated. Every exhibit, every artifact, every radio, every manual, every story. Many items come from people who simply want to ensure that these pieces of history continue educating future generations. When items aren't suitable for the museum collection, volunteers often refurbish and sell them, helping support educational programming while keeping equipment out of landfills. As CHRS continues to grow, we are increasingly pursuing grants, sponsorships, and partnerships to expand exhibits, improve accessibility, and create more technically engaging visitor experiences. Like any nonprofit organization, CHRS depends on support from people who believe this history is worth preserving. I like to think about support in three categories: time, talent, and treasure. Time is the volunteer effort that built CHRS. Talent is the specialized knowledge that keeps these technologies alive. Treasure helps us maintain the building, preserve collections, build exhibits, and support educational programs. Looking around this room, I suspect many of you fit into one or several categories. Whether you're mentoring a new operator, restoring a radio, donating equipment, volunteering in the museum, or supporting a project financially, you're helping preserve an important part of communications history. Our current capital campaign is helping us build more interactive exhibits, expand educational programming, and create experiences that inspire future generations. CHRS has evolved from a hobbyist organization into a working museum dedicated to preserving communications history. But ultimately, what we're preserving isn't just equipment and technology. We're preserving knowledge. We're preserving skills. We're preserving curiosity. We're preserving the spirit of experimentation that built the communications world we enjoy today. We want people to understand radio, and we want knowledge to survive. We want future generations to appreciate the ingenuity, creativity, and persistence that built modern communications. Whether that happens through restoring a receiver, operating a station, mentoring a new ham, teaching Morse code, building an antenna, or preserving an artifact, we're here to continue that story. Thank you for having me tonight. I'd love to answer questions, hear about your projects, and hopefully welcome many of you to Radio Central in Alameda.
Okay, thank you so much. That was very educational. We'll take questions from the room, and anybody on Zoom, we'll do as we usually do. Go ahead and put it in the chat, and then we'll get your chat question here momentarily. First up is Andy.
Okay, thanks very much for this interesting presentation. It's one thing that you taught me here. You know, that ding, 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 dong. It's in a musical scale C. Pardon my lack of musical voice. It would be G-E-C.
Correct.
Anybody else here in the room? Okay, Dave's got one, then Daryl.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering how much of your space has been used up. Do you have a lot of space left in your
No,
for doing that, or are you 80% or 70%, or what's your situation?
120%.
Yeah.
So our building is about 7,000 square feet on the interior. Exterior, we have 3 40-foot shipping containers that are off to the side, and all 3 are filled. One is a sales shed where we keep the vintage radios that we electronically refurbish and add an aux cable that a Bluetooth component can be added to. That's one way in which we keep the radios out of the waste stream. They're still radios, they work as radios, but they also work as Bluetooth speakers. We have one that's keeper stuff and one that's storage for other things.
Okay, got a question here in the back.
Actually, it's not a question. Just we attended the radio day last year,
Wonderful.
and I just want to say how fabulous it is.
Thank you so much.
And can't recommend it highly enough.
Really fun event. We've expanded it every year. Before I was hired, it had 250 attendees over the course of a day. The year I was hired, we made that 500. Last year was 1,000, and my goal for this year is 2,000. So tell all your friends, it's free. We're going to have 4 food trucks. We've got live radio plays. We've got live music. We've got someone acoustic in the morning. We've got Don Neely's jazz, Roaring 20s. In the afternoon, and in the evening, we've got a live Motown band. So it's a whole lot of fun. Broadcasters, vendor booths, surplus electronic sale, which people get, they line up early to get into that.
Yes, and I would add this for the technically minded radio heads of you. It's thrilling to see what they've got on display and to see what's out in the yard being sold. It's just, it's really worth the trip over there.
First of all, thank you, Rachel, for such an excellent presentation. I love this stuff. You said you had surplus supplies of, I've got like an SB 200 amplifier that needs 572Bs tubes.
That was totally in my presentation.
Yeah. So
we do have surplus ham equipment, and if you're a member, we sell it for a very reduced rate. So if you are interested, feel free to come on down. I'll introduce you to all the ham leaders, and we'll see what we can do for you.
But what's even more telling, or what's more impressive, is that there is a source for people who want to do this, and you're one of them, because those things are not easy to find. So, which is great. Thanks for educating us. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Okay, got some more hands. We'll come over here.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious how you guys think about like the knowledge transfer part of it. Like, do you have any structure? Are you like capturing things, like putting together video archives? Like, just curious what your structure is.
Yes to all. One of the things that we have, in addition to trying to film certain members who really do have specific knowledge and, getting that down in a way, we also have, these classes like our beginning radio repair class, where we're trying to get people in to have that knowledge transfer. We have an incredible wealth of members with an incredible depth of knowledge. And so people who are there every weekend, it gets shared. And as we try to bring in younger and younger members, we're hoping that that continues to flow.
All right, Dave's up.
I'd like a sort of a follow-on that. Time marches on, and the things that we sort of have today will be the antiques of tomorrow.
Correct, yes.
A lot of the people who invented many of the digital techniques and stuff we're using are still alive, but won't be for much longer. Are you considering in trying to interview them and get their stories captured, much the same way the Computer Museum does that for the computing?
Well, right.
So the short answer is absolutely yes. And we're trying to do this in 2 prongs. So we have our Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame side, which is really the public broadcasting side. And for that, we have our living histories. So that's a bit more of a fully formed, fully fleshed out program. But yes, we would like to do that for the equipment side as well. And I think the only barrier is making sure that we get those introductions to those people so that we can capture the knowledge and their stories.
Hold on, hold on.
Yeah, that is 100%.
I guess just for Zoom, I mean, that sounds like a great project for the kids to go out and actually interview these luminaries, because I know they would love to do that knowledge transfer, and great for the kids to learn
Absolutely.
transmission art.
Yes, and with our broadcasting and podcasting camps, we did one last summer. We're doing it again this summer. But the idea is that as we grow and have the infrastructure to be able to support it, we would like something that is regular, something that's more year round. And then that would be where we could have an opportunity like that.
Oh, over here.
Well, hi, and thank you for your presentation. Very nicely done. I appreciated it. I second the comment about the radio day by the Bay, and there's one aspect of the radio day which I think deserves some additional mention, which is the auction. And I've been to some of those events in the past, and some of the most beautiful radios I've ever seen are auctioned there at seemingly reasonable prices. I think you may have mentioned on this, but one treat is the wood radios, the radios in the wood cases. You have your own wood refinishing shop, is that right?
We don't have a refinishing shop on site, but we do have the ability to refinish. So a lot of them are refurbished. And then we have a couple of members specifically who have really incredible skills in that area, and they do some extra special work for us.
So even if you're not interested in buying an auction piece, it's wonderful just looking at them. So.
Yes, this year's auction is supposed to have 50 items. We've already started compiling the catalog for it. There are things from unique kind of, Bakelite, Catalan pieces, maybe a Canadian radio or whatever, to, tombstone and cathedral style radios in the beautiful wood cases as well. We have a number of Zeniths that are coming up, including a Zenith Cube. Anyway, some really beautiful pieces.
Hi, Alan Young. I've been a member of CHRS for a couple of years now. I started by restoring old radios. And,
Find you.
And then I got introduced to the people restoring the televisions.
Ah, yes.
And I was just astounded at the depth of knowledge. There are broadcast engineers have 30 years experience, 40 years experience or more. And they come and share about things that they've worked on personally or developed.
Yes.
And people have rebuilt television studio cameras.
Oh, yeah.
And they wheel them in there and they talk about them down to the circuit level. It's amazing.
Yes. Did you attend our television?
I wasn't able this year, but yeah.
Yeah.
And so that made me, I restored my first, late 40s television. And so that was a lot of fun. So it's directly due to CHRS.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. John Staples is usually the person who demonstrates on those. He's a PhD physicist and absolutely brilliant, but again, so willing to share his knowledge.
Okay, I know there's some folks waiting on Zoom, but let me see if there's anybody. Andy? Okay, we'll get Andy and then we'll get Zoom here.
Always Andy.
Yeah. Do you have a Galena crystal with a cat whisker?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Several.
Love to see that. That's what
Come on down. We've got lots.
That was the first radio receiver I built when I was 10 years old.
Oh, very nice. A lovely crystal set. Did it have a loose coupler?
Loose coupler. Did it have,
a loose coupler? Just the cat's whisker and the Galena?
My father taught me how to do that when he was a small boy. And he gave me a depleted toilet paper roll.
Ah, yeah. And the
wire on it.
There you go.
And it scratched the surface for tuning.
Yep. Yep. Nice.
Okay,
Really
I'll let you
close
guys take care of the Zoom questions real quick.
I can read it. All right, so the first actually looks like we have 3 questions now. First question, what do you have in your radio antenna farm at the society?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What do you have in your radio antenna farm at the society?
That's a really great question. And I wish I had a more technical knowledge so I could tell you, but we do have an antenna farm. We have one. We actually have them in several places on top of the building and around the building. And we have a large antenna, which I understand is HF. And we also have even had someone install a piece for Meshtastic. So we're trying to come forward too. But I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for that. I tried to convince someone to come with me who could have answered that question.
Okay, so the second Zoom question is, how do we sign up for beginner radio repair?
Right. So if you become a member, which I brought flyers, you can take it home, do it online. If you become a member, then you can simply email me and I will connect you with the person who's in charge of those classes and he'll put you on the list. We do them fairly infrequently. They're about 3 or 4 times per year. And so once you're on that list, when we have the next class, they'll reach out to you. And if you're available on the same day and time, it's a really great class. You come, I think, starting at 9 a.m. and you get to work one-on-one with a tech on a radio that they have selected all day until about 3 p.m. So you really get one-on-one, in-depth, all-day knowledge. It's
And just,
really valuable.
and I don't know if you folks noticed, she was showing a piece of a flyer there, but if you notice, she's got a binder full of other stuff. So during the break, you'll have a lot of stuff to look at and be impressed and take home. So you'll get a whole bunch of information.
I know, I wish I had known this was so big. I brought a lot of journals, but I could have brought a lot more.
Okay, next question.
All right, last Zoom question. How did you get into this and become the executive director?
That's a really good question. So I lived in Texas prior to moving to the Bay Area. When we moved here, we moved peak COVID, so we were going against traffic. And at that time, you know, moving, I had stopped working where I was working before, and then we were in lockdown. So when we finally crawled out from underneath that rock, I was like, I've got to get a job. And so I started applying, and my background is education, nonprofits, and I owned my own business in Texas. And I did try to apply to several tech companies, and no one could parse my resume. So my background, since I had spent about 18 years in nonprofits, that was where I got the most interviews. And so at one point I had given up and I was like, I'm not looking anymore. I'm quitting for a while. And my husband sent me one more tech thing to look into. And as I was looking it up, this one popped up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a nonprofit and it's in Alameda. I live in Alameda. Like this is ideal. And so I started the interviewing process. I think they had something like 213 applications, and I sent my resume in and they came back and said, we're looking for someone with education, business, and nonprofit backgrounds. And I was like, I'm your unicorn. And over time, I did end up getting hired. And one of the things I said to them at one point, I was like, I want to be crystal clear. I don't know anything about radio. And they go, oh, yeah. We have all that knowledge. We need you for the other things. So that's how I got here.
You could have fooled us because you're very articulate and
I've been sponging for 3 years.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Any other?
Okay, any more questions in the room?
How about any last minute Zoomers?
So I haven't built a radio, but I have recapped a radio. I recapped a Rimmler. So I'm in.
There you go.
Girl. Great talk, Rachel. Thank you so much.
July. You just asked me when am I getting my license, and the answer is July 25th.
Alrighty.
Whenever I come to these meetings, everyone goes around and says their name and call sign, and they get to me and I say Rachel Lee, CHRS ED. But that's not my call sign.
We'll fix that.
You'll be a KO6 something there.
So this would be an interesting invite. You heard an announcement earlier, maybe about the 9 a.m. TalkNet that's on the N6 NFI. You should be able to reach the N6 NFI from where you are. It's over off the Stanford dish right over here.
Okay.
And that would be an interesting place to have people join the net and bring up topics like these. And that is exactly what a lot of people, it's not an extremely technical net. On Fridays, oftentimes there is a woman named Kristen McIntyre, K6WX, extremely technical. And, she's answered a lot of the questions and too, but this would be something where you sort of can tie what you're doing into the amateur radio community on weekday mornings at 9 a.m. if that works.
And you said every weekday morning?
Every weekday
Oh,
morning.
wow. I wrote Fridays. Okay.
On N6 NFI, 145.230. It's a repeater. So what is it? Negative offset? Yeah, negative offset. And 100 hertz. It's on the website.
Okay.
So just a thought, food for thought.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
And if we're going to keep asking you or inviting you to things, I'm really biased about our field day site. So come on over to Menlo Park at Bidwell Bayfront Park and you'll be impressed.
Awesome.
Yep.
Nice.
You will be impressed for sure. I had a question. You mentioned somebody asked about the beginning radio repair class.
Yes.
And you talked about that. What else can people do? Do they just drop by, or should they go to the website? Like, how, if they were interested in coming by and actually just doing something hands-on or working with somebody that was there or volunteering?
Yeah.
What's the right way to do this?
So CHRS is open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 10 to 3. However, a lot of times people want a tour, and if you want to bring several people, I'm there 6 days a week. So if you come, I will give you a tour. Just let me know you're coming. My email address is probably around here somewhere. These guys can share it with you. Let me know you're coming and I'll be glad to give you a tour. So that's number one. If you come during our open hours, Wednesdays and Saturdays from 10 to 3, in addition to getting a tour, you can also, see what volunteering is like. We do have a volunteer coordinator. He can talk you through all the different opportunities. One of the things that I think makes the most sense is when people tour the building or have a virtual tour like we did today, kind of saying, you know what, I'm really interested in television, or I'm really interested in the tube vault or whatever. And then we introduce you to the leads of those areas. And then you can kind of figure out how to fit yourself in. We have so many different projects. Of course, sorting tubes is a big one, and repairing things. But additionally, with our Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame, we're doing a huge cataloging and digitizing project. So that's an opportunity. In our library, same thing, cataloging, digitizing, putting things up on Internet Archive. So there's something for everyone. If you like dusting, we have a ton of things to dust.
Oh yeah, everybody loves dusting.
Everybody loves dusting. If somebody has some kind of vintage radio that they're interested in trying to restore, is that something that they can come and try and do with help at the museum? Or?
Yes. So what we do is Wednesdays and Saturdays, the shop is open. If you are coming to work on your own project, you need to be a member. And what we request is that from whenever you start 9 a.m., say to noon, that you work on something for CHRS, maybe helping recap a radio, adding Bluetooth, whatever it is. And then in the afternoons, everyone is free to work on their own projects. So that is when you can receive help from the incredible minds that are on site.
That's really cool.
Great. Nice.
I really like that. That sounds like a great opportunity for people to come both learn something and maybe get something done that they really haven't figured out how to get done themselves. So that sounds really, really great.
I think that's it.